Hello, and welcome to Great.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Mark Yagi, Executive Director at Waterkeeper Alliance, an organization that works to ensure every community worldwide has drinkable, fishable, and swimmable water. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that is strengthening and growing a global network of leaders protecting everyone's right to clean water. Hello, Mark. Welcome to Great.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
Hi, Kareem. Thank you so much for having me. Really grateful to be here.
Thank you. How would you describe Waterkeeper Alliance for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Well, as a basic overview, Waterkeeper Alliance is a global movement that unites more than 350 locally based clean water advocacy organizations, and we focus citizen action on issues that affect waterways from pollution to climate change. But I had a little bit of brief history that tells where we come from, in that while we were incorporated, Waterkeeper Alliance was incorporated in 1999. Our Waterkeeper movement really was started by a band of blue-collar fishermen on New York's Hudson River back in 1966, because industrial polluters were destroying their way of life. They were no longer able to catch their fish or sell it at the fish market. There was massive dumping of oil and sewage and other waste. The oil was making the fish taste like diesel fuel. It was blackening the beaches. And it was disrupting a way of life that they had practiced for generations. And so what those Hudson River fishermen did was they decided to stand up to some of the most powerful corporations in America in defense of their river and their livelihoods. And they used the law and the court of public opinion to champion their cause. And so, their decision was unique and powerful because it was rooted in private citizens taking responsibility for the shared resources that we, the people, own in common, that are our shared birthright, and it was their tough grassroots brand of citizen action, using citizen action and science and law, that sparked the Hudson River's miraculous recovery. And then that inspired other waterkeeper groups to launch around the world. And so that's what we're saying, today there's more than 350 of those groups in 48 countries that were premised on what those fishermen did on the Hudson. They're out on the water every day, patrolling and protecting now about 3 million square miles of rivers, lakes, and coasts. It's across the United States, in the Bahamas, and Canada, Mexico, Sweden, China, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and more. Every one of those 350 advocacy groups and those people saw a waterway, that was treasured, that they treasured, and they saw that it was in peril, and they cared enough to commit their lives to defending it. So, they spend their days tracking down polluters, or going into courtrooms to enforce environmental laws, or advocating in town meetings. And, when people ask me what a waterkeeper does, I'll say, they're in 48 countries. So these are women and men coming from different cultures, different religions, and different political and legal systems, but they all share a common firm belief that everyone should be able to, we should have a world where everyone should be able to go down to their local waterway, jump in and have a swim without fear that they're going to get sick, or to be able to get a glass of water and drink it without fear that they're going to poison themselves with toxic chemicals, or be able to catch a fish and bring it home and feed it to their family without fear that it's going to be contaminated with mercury or PCBs. Mm-hmm. That's what we're all about, supporting those advocacy groups around the world and their effort to fight for clean water.
Mm-hmm. What started as a movement by Hudson River fishermen has grown into the network, as you mentioned by you, of over 300 activist groups that are fighting in different locations in 48 countries for the clean water, for the access of clean water for their communities. And the fact that the citizens themselves are standing up against destructive industries indicates that people are fighting for the rights of the clean water, and you uniting them is bringing them together, is raising more awareness on the importance of this issue. Could you please describe how widespread is the issue of absence of the clean water, and what are some threats to clean and safe water that exists in today's world?
Well, it's a great question. We're trying to create that world where everyone can have that water to be able to jump in and have a swim or get a glass of water to drink. And, we don't have that world where now when 2 billion people lack access to clean water, or, 3.2 million children under the age of 5 die every year because of dirty water and poor sanitation. And so, the issues affecting, it's such an important issue. I mean, let's just start with water. Generally, think about it, no part of our life is unaffected by water. We drink it or we die. We bathe with it. We wash with it. It's a source of relaxation, recreation, rejuvenation. We catch our food out of rivers and oceans often. It's incredibly, in all of its forms, whether it's rain, sleet, or snow, it's essential to our atmosphere. It's essential to the air we breathe. And so it's the most important resource we have. And when you talk about, key issues to resolve, first and foremost, you got the global climate crisis that's exacerbating all of the existing water quality and quantity issues we have. And almost all of the issues that our water keepers grapple with, and there are many, they're all connected to that one overriding issue, because climate change is a water issue. And if you think about climate change, if you ask most people what they think about climate change, they're most likely going to be saying something related to water. They're going to say, well, drought, flooding, extreme weather events, sea level rise, ocean acidification. And so, and we see that every day with our groups. In Ladakh, India, our Himalayan glacier waterkeeper tells us how over the past decade or so, everything turned upside down, where it snows when it shouldn't, it doesn't rain when it should. They've had communities relocated due to drought, while others have been forced to rebuild after devastating floods. In Mongolia, we've got a Tool River waterkeeper reports how drought is forcing more and more people to migrate from the countryside into cities that aren't equipped with the infrastructure to take the population growth. Or bring it here to the United States in Puget Sound. Our Puget Sound keeper sees the issue of ocean acidification threatening their $270 million a year shellfish industry. And then, thinking about how it impacts really, survival. In the Bahamas, our waterkeepers there know there's a real risk they may lose a majority of their land to sea level rise this century. And they worry for the security of their culture, their heritage and their existence. And we have examples of like that all around the world that really show that interconnectedness of climate and water, as we see climate change altering the chemistry of our oceans, the character of our coastlines, and the timing and intensity of rain and snow, and wreaking havoc across the planet. So there's a lot of issues on top of that. The climate change just sort of hovers over it all. You've got industrial pollution and water scarcity and plastic pollution in the oceans, deteriorating infrastructure, sewage problems, but they all then fall under that big looming, existential crisis of climate change.
Mm-hmm. The statistics that you mentioned, that over 2 billion people don't have access to clean water and 3.5 million children die because of that. It's very sad statistics, and it's alarming at the same time. And the threats of it mainly being by climate change, which is the results of the action of other humans, is even sad, because we ourselves resulted in the fact that our other human beings, our members of the community in different parts of the world, don't have access to clean water. And realizing that is the first step to bringing awareness and then making a plan to fight it, and to make sure that other people across the globe have clean and safe water as well. But I believe there is some water standards that ensures that there is a clean water. Maybe it might different in different locations, but what are the governments and environmental law in general is doing to enforce clean water standards in United States and across other locations that you work in?
Yeah, in many places they have laws on the books that are designed to protect water, our shared resource that we have, that we all need to survive. The problem is that those laws are not enforced all the time. And We see it all the time in the United States. We've got the Clean Water Act, and the Clean Water Act sets forth standards of what a polluter can discharge into a waterway. And if you violate the Clean Water Act, you can have the law enforced against you and be forced to clean up the mess that you've created in destroying our shared common resource. The problem, that Clean Water Act actually has a citizen suit provision, which is what we use a lot, in that if the state or the polluter doesn't clean up their mess and the state or the federal government doesn't force them to do it, then we can go and do it and bring them to court. Which is unique among some laws where citizens can actually step in and do the work of the attorney general or the district attorney, take over to be a private attorney general in a sense. And the reason why that's important is, getting back to your question, is those laws aren't enforced a lot of the time. And a lot of it really just it all traces back to a subversion of our democracy, in that polluters tend to line the pockets of politicians, and those politicians end up doing the work of the polluters instead of the people who elected them to be in office. And you can see it all the time where they'll give a really meager fine to a polluter or refuse to address the issue. And that's one way that our democracy is being subverted. And so one big way that we can change things is to get get cash out of campaign, deal with campaign financing. But yeah, most countries do have laws on the books to protect water. It's just a matter of whether they're enforced. And then there's what was the genesis really of Hudson Riverkeeper, which was the first waterkeeper that started, was they were playing a role to protect the public trust, which are the air we breathe and the water we drink that belong to all of us. And the public trust doctrine, speaking of laws to protect us, is a doctrine that goes back to ancient Roman times. It was in the Justinian Code and the Magna Carta. It's in almost every constitution that we share these resources in common, and nobody has the right to adversely impact those resources to the detriment of others. Mm-hmm. And so we see ourselves as trying to enforce the public trust. But unfortunately, we get in situations where government turns a blind eye to a pollution problem, and that allows that activity to continue.
Mm-hmm. It's heartbreaking to realize that there are laws that exist. However, they're not enforced. And as you mentioned, politicians close eyes on them. And it's very sad, because you mentioned the politicians should be the one gaining the trust of the public and taking care of the public, rather than individual needs of industries and corporations that fuel their pockets. So it's very sad to see that. But thanks God, they are waterkeeper groups who are there to voice their opinions, to voice their concerns, and bring attention to this cause, to this urgent issue. You mentioned waterkeeper groups going to the court and fighting, but as you are an alliance and a network of more than 300 waterkeeper groups, could you please describe more in detail what functions do those waterkeeper groups do? And if you can share some stories where they were able to make a difference, would highly appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to wear a lot of hats, because sometimes they are in a courtroom enforcing the law. Sometimes they're in a classroom teaching kids. Sometimes they're in a town hall meeting advocating about a project. And, that is one of the best ways to give you some examples of how these women and men who've taken on the mantle of waterkeeper, how they're fighting for their watershed and their community. In Peru, we've got a Marañón River waterkeeper, and they're now leading the resistance against a proposal to build 20 dams on the Marañón River, which is the main tributary of the Amazon. And if those dams are built, they would seriously degrade the Amazon rainforest, which is an incredibly important resource for the fight against climate change. In Buffalo, New York, the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper has spearheaded a $100 million effort that's now nearly been completed to clean up heavily polluted Buffalo River that was polluted back in decades ago. They've also secured $92 million to increase green infrastructure to be able to use nature to filter our water. And rather than adding more pavement and trying to engineer solutions, let's work with nature and support nature. In Portland, Oregon, our Columbia Riverkeeper has been, over the last 10 years, they've dedicated themselves to defeating more than a dozen proposals for fossil fuel export terminals in the Pacific Northwest. And they took, their work was to take grassroots organizing, working with people in the community, and combine that with savvy legal strategies to prevent the fossil fuel industry from turning the Columbia River into basically a fossil fuel highway. And so that's another big, they were basically going to be taking a lot of fossil fuels, transporting them over the Columbia River and sending them to Asia to be burned as coal and other and natural gas. And so having those stopped has been a big boon in the fight against fossil fuels and climate change. Mm-hmm. I think that in China, there are many communities where industrial pollution is so rampant and deadly. They call these places cancer villages. And since probably in about past 10 to 15 years, our Upper Hawaii River Waterkeeper has built 50 purification systems in villages to water purification systems in these villages to now more than 80,000 villagers have clean water that they didn't have before. And the cancer rate in the villages has dropped about 90% over the past decade, went from 330 cases per 100,000 people to just 30 per 100,000 people. So just adding that, doing that kind of work of providing them a clean drinking water source has been a huge help. Those stories there's stories like that. One of my favorites, if we have a minute, is just one of my first days on the job. This was back in 2005. I was asked to go to Senegal, and there was a group there that they were a village. The village was broken into soccer groups or football teams, and one of the groups was very active on social justice issues, and they were teaching the community about hygiene, HIV/AIDS prevention, and they wanted to clean up their bay because their bay 25 years before had been this beautiful fishing bay, and it was just loaded with fish. People went out there and went fishing all the time, but over time, industrial pollution destroyed it. And they couldn't fish there anymore. They couldn't bathe in the bay. They couldn't go into the bay, and they're right on the beach. The community, it's about 40,000 villagers with no sanitation service, no ability to go into their bay. And everyone has about 2.3 diseases on average. And this soccer group learned about the Waterkeeper model from one of their former villages who had moved to Canada. And they said, we should become a Waterkeeper. And so they started. I went over there to visit them, and then we had no waterkeepers in Africa at the time. Now there are about 14. And we had an interpreter because I didn't speak French or Wolof. And so we were speaking back and forth. And I said to their leader, Mbeke, I said, I'm so inspired by all you're doing, but I'm not sure how we would be able to help you as our network, because there are no waterkeepers in Africa. Nobody speaks Wolof or French. And Mbeke said, well, you have a proven international model. You've got a brand recognition. I'm going to learn to speak English. And he said, and I'm going to go to all of your conferences and trainings, and I'm going to learn from all of the other waterkeepers and take their ideas of how they addressed an issue, and I'm going to bring it back and apply here. So I'll fast forward the story. Over time, this was 2006. In 2014, I was on my computer, and I saw an article on BCC about how Han Baykeeper and Mbeke was largely responsible for forcing the government and some European development banks to commit $68 million to clean up their bay. And the bay looks nothing like it was before. And it just shows the power of a network of being able to learn from each other and share with each other and what you can accomplish as citizens taking action.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for sharing those beautiful stories. The fact that the individual from Africa was able to engage and learn from different best practices of other water groups that are in your alliance, and then implement it in his community, and then see such a huge result that affected and impacted positively the lives of communities and people who were surrounded by that, is very wonderful. And it shows that the work that water keepers are doing is indeed impactful, and they are making changes and making clean water more accessible to communities across the globe. Your organization runs several campaigns, and one of the campaigns that you are currently running is Pure Farms, Pure Water. Could you please tell us more about it and your fight against destructive practices of meat production industry?
Yeah, industrial agriculture, Pure Farms, Pure Waters is basically a campaign to try to get industrial agriculture to comply with environmental laws. And they have been able to take what used to be a system of family farms and turn them into these massive factories that stuff as many hogs or turkeys or birds into this facility as possible, and cut costs by not complying with environmental laws, injecting them with all kinds of hormones and steroids and things. And we are, that's why it's so cheap for them to make a burger or make some chicken wings or a piece of chicken, because they're not covering the cost. They're imposing the cost of their waste on society. They dump all of their waste into our waterways. It kills our fish. It destroys people that live around these places can barely breathe because it makes their eyes burn. And we're out there using the Clean Water Act and other laws to try to get them to comply with the law and actually accept the full cost of what it takes to make a burger or a piece of chicken. That's where they get that competitive advantage against family farms. And so it's been one of our longest running campaigns, and they're a very well-financed industry, and it's a big challenge to take them on, but it's an important fight.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, what they're doing is very destructive, and those destructive practices are impacting the access that many people have to the clean water, and the fact that you are fighting against them and ensuring that the Clean Water Act is being enforced is great to know, and it's very acknowledging, and hopefully it will bring end to these destructive practices of meat production industry. If someone would like to support Waterkeeper Alliance, how can they do that?
Well, I definitely would encourage people to work and support us. Over these last 55 years, the world's waterkeepers have acted in thousands of dramatic episodes on behalf of nearly 750 million people and counting. And so as our supporters and our donors increase, our reach will continue to grow. And so we need everyone's help. Two things. One, go to waterkeeper.org, and people can sign up for our email distribution list so we can keep you apprised of key issues, key water related issues and climate issues, and give you opportunities to make your voice heard. We're, of course, happy to accept donations as well. And secondly, on our website, you can find your local waterkeeper and support their grassroots efforts in protecting your water in your community. If we don't have one, you can help us try to find one, but you can sign up for their newsletters. You can follow them on social media. You can make a donation, and depending on what they're doing and what's happening at the time, you might be able to participate in cleanups, learn about native plantings, take water samples, or attend and speak at a hearing on a polluting project. And so we would definitely encourage people to act locally by supporting a local group, and think globally by supporting us, and we can help provide information and make your voice heard. It's going to be, really important it's going to be really important for everyone to be involved, because if the last half century taught us anything, it's that the decline of and destruction of the riches of the earth are not destiny. These processes can be reversed, and with courage and commitment and vision, the natural world can be reborn. But it's going to take everyone to be involved.
Absolutely. The link to the Waterkeeper Alliance website will be provided in the description, so you viewing or listening can go to their website, learn more about the great work Mark and the team are doing at Waterkeeper Alliance, and search the local Waterkeeper Alliance and help them in ensuring that everyone has access to clean water. Thank you so much, Mark. It was wonderful to get to know you and the great work you and the team are doing at Waterkeeper Alliance.
Thank you, Kareem. We're so grateful for being here.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithms that this conversation is important, that we need to work on ensuring that every community worldwide has drinkable, fishable, and swimmable clean water. Thank you and see you in the next episode.